Hello, my name is Christopher Kerr, and I am an author of historical fiction. Or is it, as I often say, because my books are based on meticulous historical research, the results of which I quite often find shocking, and I then weave those into the plot of my novels, revealing as I do so truths which may well have been hidden, or perhaps in a more sinister way, covered up. And I like to expose these and certainly raise historical conjecture. Now, one mystery which comes out of the end of the Second World War is what on earth happened to the Führer? Where was Hitler at the end of the war? We were given a real load of hogwash about the whereabouts of Adolf Hitler after the end of the Second World War in a novel summary by Hugh Trevor Roper. Well, a lot of that doesn't quite ring true. Let's look at what happened. In 1945, in the closing stages of the Second World War, events were moving fast. Soviet forces in the east had advanced into Germany from Poland in January 1945, but they halted to regroup in March. In the west, Allied forces had encountered stiff opposition in France after D-Day, and German pockets of resistance remained with accompanying counterattacks, notably the German Ardennes offensive in December 1944, known as the Battle of the Bulge. This initially was highly successful as the panzers broke through the lines of the Allies, causing panic, particularly amongst the American forces. However, after that initial breakthrough, the counterattack was swift and decisive, and the Germans suffered a defeat in the Ardennes by the end of January 1945, when it was all but over. Heavy fighting, however, did continue in France right up until the end of the war. Paris, however, had fallen on the 25th of August 1944, but it was not until early March 1945 that Allied troops first crossed the Rhine into Germany. Well, on the 16th of January 1945, Hitler returned to Berlin from his eastern HQ at Rastenburg and took up residence in his bunker 50 feet below ground level at the Reichs-Chancellery in the Reichs-Chancellery Gardens. On the 15th of April 1945, the Soviets, the Red Army, had advanced to within 37 miles east of Berlin, and other forces were pushing south of the city. And they decided that they were going to launch a final all-out, massive attack on the capital, no matter what the losses. An encirclement of the city was attempted with an attack by the Red Army forces east, south, and north of the city. By 20th of April, Hitler's birthday, the Russians had virtually encircled Berlin, but had suffered staggering losses, and far more than the German defenders. Soviet artillery at that time began a relentless shelling of the city on that day, which continued right up until the surrender of Berlin. On the 22nd of April 1945, Hitler had a meeting with his generals when he flew into a rage, after which he suffered a breakdown and had to be escorted out of the room by Martin Bormann. The meeting reconvened, and Hitler then declared that the war was lost and that he had been betrayed, but that he had decided to remain at the bunker until the end. On the 29th of April, just after midnight, Hitler married Eva Braun, his long-time lover, in the bunker, after which the official narrative becomes a little confused. Well, we're told that on the 30th of April at 2:30 p.m., Hitler and his wife retired to his study after thanking their staff. Shortly afterwards, his valet, Heinz Linger, on smelling gunpowder, alerted Martin Bormann. Wouldn't you have thought they would have heard the shot? Well, that's the narrative, and they then entered Hitler's quarters to discover Hitler's body and that of Eva Hitler, formerly Eva Braun. He had, we are told, shot himself through the mouth, whilst she had taken cyanide. On the 2nd of May 1945 at 9 a.m., just after the surrender of large parts of the German forces, female Russian soldiers first entered the bunker with medical staff. All former occupants had either fled or committed suicide, apart from the maintenance engineer, Johann Henschel, who had stayed to ensure water and power supplies were maintained to the field hospital, which operated in the Chancellery grounds. On the 3rd of May, the Soviets uncovered the badly burned bodies of Joseph and Magda Goebbels. They were discovered buried in the Reichs-Chancellery garden, together with their 5 children, whom, tragically, they had arranged to poison before committing suicide. However, the bodies of Adolf Hitler and Eva Hitler were missing. Now, we are told that Stalin wished to confuse the world after the discovery of the remains of Adolf Hitler and Eva after the war, in order to cause confusion amongst his enemies, and therefore he refused to admit that they had been found buried in the Reichs-Chancellery garden initially. However, there are no records of Stalin wishing to operate this subterfuge, nor anything to verify this strategy. And in fact, extraordinarily, afterwards, Stalin arranged for aggressive interrogation methods, if not torture, of high-ranking Nazi prisoners or high-profile Nazi prisoners after the war, right through into the 1950s, to establish the whereabouts of Adolf Hitler. Hardly the actions of somebody who knows the truth. He was quite paranoid about it. Well, jump forward 20 or 30 years, and purported skeletal remains of Hitler's body were offered up by the Soviet Union for examination. Well, these remains turned out to be that of a woman, and subsequently more remains were surrendered after the end of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the more democratic Russia. And those too were discounted. Well, fast forward again until 2017. A forensic report concluded that the teeth, which is all appeared to be left of Adolf Hitler and Eva in the Russian archives, were those. He concluded that these remains were those of Adolf Hitler. However, the report is based on supposition and the records submitted by Hitler's dental surgeon after the war. Even if these were the teeth, they may, of course, have been obtained subsequent to the events surrounding his supposed death. Well, in one final twist, the report did conclude one certainty. The teeth showed no signs of gunpowder residue, therefore damning the previously accepted reports that Hitler had shot himself through the mouth as he took cyanide. So even that part of the story that we were spun back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s was untrue. So, what on earth happened to the Führer? On the 9th of May 1945, a BBC correspondent, one Thomas Cadet, was the first British journalist to enter the bunker. He confirmed that Hitler had disappeared, and part of his report can be accessed via a link in the description to this video. Now, later reports began emerging that Hitler was residing in Bariloche in Argentina. And in fact, the date of his death has been put forward as either 1962 or 1963. Certainly, there is credible evidence supporting this, including furnishings from his purported residence in Argentina, which were very similar. The furnishings were very similar to those at his alpine retreat near Berchtesgaden in Bavaria, known as the Berghof. So, whatever the truth, the fascination remains that this most wanted man in history, imagine this, the most wanted man in history, was never found. Or if he was, what on earth did really happen? In a final irony, Hitler was never tried for his war crimes, unlike others who were tried in absentia, such as Martin Bormann. Will we ever know the truth? As with many other areas of history, there is still, perhaps, a story to tell. Well, if you've enjoyed this video and watching and hearing a little bit about some of the secrets which I unearth, do please follow or share, and why not? It costs nothing to subscribe, either here or on my Facebook channel at Christopher Kerr Author. My last two novels were the Barbarossa Secret, which hit the bestseller lists, which tells the story of the greatest cover-up of the Second World War involving the rich and famous, and even the royal family, heaven forbid. Do get yourselves a copy. And Fission, which traces the story of the development of atomic weapons and states competing to both obtain it and prevent others from doing so in an espionage war which erupted, starting with its roots in the Second World War. Goodness me, did Hitler have the bomb? But going right through to the present day. That too has only been released in the last year and has also hit some best-selling lists. So do get yourselves a copy of either the Barbarossa Secret or Fission or both. They are available now on Amazon, on Kindle, in book form from most leading bookstores online, and the Audible version of The Barbarossa Secret is now available, and so will Fission be very shortly. Thank you so much for watching, as always.